manager fired the elderly employee. Months later, he returned as a partner. Robert Johnson never imagined that Tuesday in August would change his life forever. 42 years dedicated to the same company, 42 years fixing engines with his own hands, and now he was there standing at the door to the manager's office, feeling his heart race like a kid being called to the principal's office. The young Tyler Parker, only 28 years old, didn't even look up from his papers when Robert entered. The dismissal was announced with the coldness of someone commenting on the weather. New blood, modernization, cost-cutting. The words echoed in the mechanic's mind like hammer blows on cold metal. "Mr. Johnson, you understand the company needs to renew itself, right?" said Tyler, finally looking at him. "Nothing personal, but the pace today is different. Young people learn faster. They're more adaptable." Robert swallowed hard. His hands, calloused from decades of honest work, trembled slightly. "But Tyler, I know these engines better than anyone. The older buses in the fleet, I know every bolt, every—" "Exactly," interrupted the manager. "We're modernizing the fleet. Computers, sensors, new technology. You can't keep up anymore." The humiliation burned in Robert's chest like acid. Around the shop, the younger co-workers pretended not to listen, but he knew some were whispering among themselves. Jason, 22 years old, even smiled discreetly when Tyler announced he would be promoted to supervisor. "You have 1 week to get your things in order," concluded Tyler, turning back to his papers. Robert left the room carrying only his old toolbox, the same one his father had given him when he started as an apprentice. Its weight had never felt so heavy. At home, he found Martha preparing lunch. His wife of 38 years was humming softly while stirring the beans. The diabetes diagnosis had come 2 months ago, and the medicine was expensive. How was he going to tell her he no longer had a job? "You're home early today, love," said Martha, smiling. "Any problems at the shop?" "No, nothing major, just finished early." Lying to Martha was like twisting a knife in his own chest, but Robert couldn't find the strength to tell the truth. Not yet. The next morning, he left home at the usual time. Instead of going to the shop, he drove his old Civic to Central Park in Chicago. He sat on a bench and watched people go by. Hurried executives, mothers with strollers, elderly people out for a walk. It felt strange to be there on a Wednesday morning when he should have been in dirty overalls fixing engines. The hours dragged by as if time had decided to mock him. At noon, he bought a snack at a nearby bakery and went home pretending he had eaten lunch at the company. Martha didn't suspect a thing. This repeated for an entire week. Robert would leave home, spend the day in the park or walking the streets of Chicago, and return at the normal time. At night, when Martha asked about work, he made up stories about repaired buses and new co-workers. The second week was worse. The lack of money was starting to pinch, and Robert had to dip into the couple's savings to pretend the paycheck had arrived. Martha mentioned the electricity bill that was due, and he assured her he would pay it the next day. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like the video and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out, as we're just getting started. Now, continuing the story. It was on a rainy Thursday that everything changed. Robert was in the park, feeding the pigeons with breadcrumbs, when he heard a strange noise coming from the street. A black Cadillac had stopped with its hood smoking, and a man in a suit was struggling with his cell phone, trying to call a tow truck. Robert approached instinctively. 42 years of working with engines had given him an automatic reflex when faced with any mechanical problem. "Can I help?" he offered, walking up to the man. The gentleman, who must have been about 60, with neatly combed grey hair and gold-rimmed glasses, looked at Robert with some suspicion. "Well, I appreciate it, but it's better to call a specialist. It's a German car, a bit complicated." "Let me take a look. It can't hurt." Robert lifted the hood and immediately identified the problem. The radiator hose had come loose, causing it to overheat. In 5 minutes, using some basic tools he always carried in the Civic, he fixed the issue. "There, you can start it. It won't give you any more trouble." The engine purred smoothly. The man in the suit was dumbfounded. "Incredible. How did you do that so fast?" "Experience," replied Robert, wiping his hands on a rag. 42 years of working with engines. And where do you work? I need your card. I have a fleet of vehicles that's always having problems. Robert's chest tightened. How could he explain that he had been let go for being too old? I'm sort of between jobs at the moment. The man studied Robert for a few seconds. There was something about his posture, the way he handled the engine, that conveyed competence and honesty. My name is Richard Thompson. I'm a businessman here in Chicago. He extended his hand. You saved me today. I have an important meeting in 20 minutes. Robert Johnson, he replied, shaking the man's firm hand. Robert, do you have a little time to talk tomorrow? I want to make a proposal. Of course, Mr. Richard. Where? Woodfield Mall, the food court, 2 in the afternoon. I'll be there with a brown briefcase. Richard got into the Cadillac and drove off, leaving Robert standing in the rain, trying to understand what had just happened. That night, for the first time in weeks, Robert managed to sleep properly. There was a small but real hope shining in his chest. The next morning, he chose his best shirt and went to the meeting. Richard was already waiting, with a small coffee and the brown briefcase on the table. Robert, I'll be direct with you. I own several businesses in Chicago, and one of them is a transit company with 50 vehicles, including trucks and vans. The problem is, I'm spending a fortune on auto shops. Robert listened attentively, unable to believe what he was hearing. Mechanics these days are too theoretical. They know how to use a computer, but when things get tough, when the engine makes a strange noise, they don't know what to do. Richard leaned forward. Yesterday, in 5 minutes, you solved a problem that 3 different mechanics couldn't even identify. Mr. Richard, I appreciate it, but let me finish. I'm looking for someone to manage the maintenance for my fleet. Someone experienced who truly understands engines. The proposal is this. Set up a small auto shop for me. I'll provide the space, the tools, everything. You hire the team and manage it all. Robert's heart raced. It was too good to be true. What would my exact responsibilities be? Total. You would be the owner of the operation. I would pay a fixed monthly fee for the fleet maintenance, plus a bonus for availability. If you can reduce costs and keep the vehicles running, you get a percentage of the savings. Richard opened the briefcase and showed some papers with numbers. Robert tried not to show his shock. The monthly amount was almost double what he used to make at his old company. Can I think about it? Of course, but don't take too long. I need someone urgently. Robert went home with his head spinning. How would he tell Martha everything? How could he explain that he had lied about working? He found his wife organizing papers on the kitchen table. Medical bills, prescriptions, bank statements. Her face looked worried. Martha, we need to talk. She looked up, and Robert saw that she already knew. Somehow, Martha always knew. You were fired, weren't you? The words hit Robert like a punch in the gut. He sat down heavily in the chair. How did you find out? Robert, we've been married for almost 40 years. Do you think I don't notice when my husband is suffering? Martha came closer and took his hands. Besides, old George told me. He works at the front desk of your company. Said he saw you leaving with a toolbox 2 weeks ago. Robert broke down. He told her about the dismissal, about the lies, about the time wasted in the park. Martha listened in silence, stroking his graying hair. And today? What did you do today? Robert took a deep breath and told her about the meeting with Richard, about the proposal, about the possibility of starting over. When he finished, Martha was smiling. Are you going to accept? I don't know, Martha. What if it goes wrong? What if I can't do it? Maybe Tyler is right. Maybe I am too old. Martha got up and went to a picture frame on the shelf. She brought back an old, faded photo where a young Robert in his early 20s was posing next to a bus he had fixed. Do you remember this photo? Of course. It was my first solo job, a bus that nobody could fix. And what did you tell me that day? Robert smiled for the first time in weeks. That an engine doesn't have an age. It either works or it doesn't. Exactly. Martha kissed his forehead. Engines don't have an age, Robert, and neither do you. The next morning, Robert called Richard and accepted the proposal. The space Richard had reserved for the auto shop was in the North Industrial District, in an industrial area of Chicago. It was large, well lit, with modern equipment still in boxes. "Impressive, huh?" said Richard, showing him the facilities. "I bought all this a year ago, but I never managed to find someone I could trust to run it." Robert walked through the space like a kid in a toy store. Hydraulic lifts, complete workbenches, tools he had only dreamed of having. "When can I start?" "Tomorrow, if you want." "Oh, and Robert, one important thing. You have full autonomy to hire whoever you want. I know these operations work best when the team knows and trusts each other." Robert nodded, but an idea was germinating in his head. In the first week he worked alone, getting to know the vehicles in the fleet and identifying recurring problems. It was heavy work for one person, but each repaired engine brought back the confidence that Tyler had destroyed. It was in the second week that he started receiving unexpected visits. First came Frank, a 58-year-old mechanic who had been fired from a transit company in Cicero. "I heard you opened a shop, Robert. Are you hiring?" Then came Walter, 62, a transmission specialist who had lost his job when the shop he worked at closed down. Within a few days, Robert had a team of 5 mechanics, all experienced, all with stories similar to his. Men who had been discarded by the market for being considered too old. The difference was impressive. Jobs that used to take days to complete were solved in hours. The team's combined experience was unbeatable. Richard was impressed with the results. The fleet's availability rose from 70 to 95% in just 1 month. "Robert, what you guys are doing is fantastic. I've never had such efficient maintenance." But it wasn't just Richard who was noticing. Other companies in the area began seeking out the shop's services. Word of mouth worked better than any advertisement. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like the video, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out as we're just getting started. Now back to the story. Meanwhile, at the company where Robert had worked for 42 years, things were not going well. Tyler had promoted Jason to supervisor, but the young man didn't have enough experience to manage the maintenance of the urban bus fleet. The problems started small. Wrong diagnoses, parts replaced unnecessarily, services redone 2 or 3 times, but they grew like a snowball. In the first week after Robert left, 3 buses broke down in the middle of traffic due to problems that could have been prevented with proper preventive maintenance. In the second week, the situation got worse. Jason had decided to modernize the procedures, creating spreadsheets and computerized controls, but the real problems with the vehicles remained unsolved. "Tyler, we're having a lot of problems with the fleet," complained Mike, one of the most senior mechanics left in the company. "The buses are breaking down all the time." "It's a matter of adaptation, Mike. You'll get used to the new methods," replied Tyler without looking up from his computer. But the truth was that Tyler was also feeling the pressure. The company director, Mr. William Foster, had called him out twice in the last few weeks because of the delays and problems with the fleet. In the third week, the unthinkable happened. A bus full of passengers broke down on Interstate 290 on the way out of Chicago, right during rush hour. The engine overheated because no one had identified a small leak in the cooling system. The situation made the local news. Windy City Transit bus leaves passengers stranded on the road. The company lost points in the public transportation quality rankings. Mr. William Foster called an emergency meeting. "Tyler, what is happening with our maintenance? We've never had so many problems like this." "Sir, it's just that the team is still adapting to the new procedures. It's normal to have some adjustments at the beginning." "Adjustments?" The director's voice was raised. "We're losing money, losing contracts, losing credibility. These aren't adjustments. These are losses." Tyler swallowed hard. For the first time since he took over as manager, he felt afraid of losing his job. "Mr. William Foster, I will intensify the training. In 2 weeks, everything will be back to normal." 2 weeks? "Tyler, in 2 weeks we could be out of the Chicago public transportation system. I want solutions now." That night, Tyler stayed late at the auto shop, trying to understand where he was going wrong. He looked at the empty workbenches where Robert used to work, and for the first time admitted to himself that he might have made a mistake. But pride spoke louder. Instead of acknowledging the error, Tyler decided to intensify the pressure on the employees. "Starting tomorrow, you will work until all problems are solved," he announced to the team. "And anyone who can't keep up can look for another job." The measure had the opposite effect. The more experienced mechanics, who were already demotivated, started looking for work elsewhere. And many ended up hearing about the auto shop Robert had set up. Carl, a 50-year-old mechanic who had worked at the company for 15 years, was the first to get up the courage. "Robert, are you needing more people? I can't stand working in that environment anymore." "What happened, Carl?" "That kid Tyler has gone crazy. He wants us to work 12 hours a day to fix the problems he created himself. And the worst part is, he doesn't listen to anyone. We try to explain that some jobs need time, need care, but he only wants speed." Robert shook his head. He had known Carl for years and knew he was a competent professional. "Look, Carl, right now I can't hire anyone else, but if any opportunity comes up, I'll let you know." "Thank you, Robert. It's good to know there are still sensible people in this profession." 2 weeks later, Richard showed up at the shop with an unexpected proposal. "Robert, I have some news. A friend of mine, who runs a logistics company, heard about our work here and wants to outsource his entire fleet maintenance to us too." "How many vehicles?" 30. Between trucks and vans. It would almost double the workload here." Robert looked around the shop. His team was working at full capacity, but with quality. To take on more work, he would need more people and more space. "Richard, that would mean expanding the operation. I would need more mechanics, more tools." "Exactly. And I have a proposal. How about you become my partner in this venture?" Robert almost dropped the wrench he was holding. "Partner? What do you mean?" "You contribute the know-how and management, I contribute the capital. We split the profits 50-50. What do you think?" It was a tempting offer, but Robert knew that growing too fast could be dangerous. "Let me talk to my wife and I'll give you an answer tomorrow." That night, Robert and Martha stayed up late talking in their kitchen. "Martha, this could change our lives completely, or complicate them completely," she replied, ever practical. "Robert, are you happy the way things are now?" "Very happy. For the first time in months, I wake up wanting to go to work." "Then that's what matters. Money is important, but it's not everything." Robert nodded. Martha always had a way of putting things in perspective. "But I was thinking, if I accept the partnership, I could hire Carl and other mechanics who are struggling at the company where I used to work." Martha smiled. "Now you're speaking the right language. Accept the proposal, but not for the money. Accept it to help other people who are going through what you went through." The next morning, Robert accepted the partnership with Richard. Within 3 months, the shop had transformed into a maintenance company with 15 employees and 2 warehouses. Robert had hired Carl, Mike, and 3 other mechanics from his old company. The quality of the work remained exceptional, and the client list kept growing. Companies from all over Cook County were seeking out the services of Johnson & Thompson Auto Shop. Meanwhile, the situation at Robert's old company had become unsustainable. Tyler had lost 4 of his best mechanics in 2 months, and the problems with the fleet were only increasing. The bus that broke down on Interstate 290 ended up causing a chain reaction accident, fortunately with no serious injuries, but with enormous losses. The company was fined by the transit authorities and lost an important urban transport route. Mr. William Foster was desperate. In a meeting with the other company directors, the situation was laid out clearly. Either they found a solution to the maintenance problems, or the company could go bankrupt. "We need to rehire Robert," suggested one of the directors. "He knew our fleet better than anyone." "Impossible," replied Tyler. "He must be retired or working in some little neighborhood shop. Besides, that would be admitting I made a mistake." "Tyler, the mistake is already admitted," said Mr. William Foster coldly. "The question now is to find a solution." It was then that someone mentioned the rumors about a new shop in town that was stealing the best mechanics in the market. "I've heard there's a new company doing excellent work with large fleets," commented Mrs. Barbara Wilson, the financial director. "Maybe we could outsource our maintenance." "What's the company called?" asked Mr. William Foster. Johnson and Thompson, I think. Tyler felt a chill in his stomach upon hearing the last name Johnson, but he tried to hide it. Never heard of them. It must be a small company. Small or large, we need solutions, concluded Mr. William Foster. Mrs. Barbara Wilson, look up this company and schedule a meeting. We need to at least hear their proposal. That afternoon, Robert was supervising the maintenance of a truck when he received an unexpected call. Johnson and Thompson Auto Shop, Robert speaking. Good afternoon, Mr. Robert. This is Barbara Wilson from Windy City Transit. I'd like to schedule a meeting to discuss a possible service outsourcing. Robert almost dropped the phone. It was the company where he had worked for 42 years. Of course, Mrs. Barbara. When would be convenient? How about tomorrow at 2 in the afternoon, here at our headquarters? Perfect, I'll be there. Robert hung up the phone and stood still for a few minutes, processing what had just happened. The company that had fired him for being too old was now seeking his services. He told Richard, who was excited about the possibility. Robert, that would be fantastic. Having a client the size of Windy City Transit would solidify our position in the market. Richard, there's something I need to tell you. I worked at that company for 42 years. I was fired from there 6 months ago. Richard was silent for a few seconds. And what do you want to do? I want to go to the meeting, but not for revenge. I want to show professionalism. Are you sure? Won't it be awkward? It will be awkward, yes, but it's the right thing to do. That night, Robert told everything to Martha. How do you feel about it? Nervous, but also, I don't know, like it's an opportunity to show they were wrong. Robert, you don't need to prove anything to anyone. You've already proven your worth. I know, Martha, but it's not for them. It's for myself. The next morning, Robert dressed in his best suit, the same one he only wore to weddings and graduations. He chose a blue tie that Martha had given him for his last birthday. When he arrived at the company, he felt a strange nostalgia. It was like visiting the house he lived in as a child after many years. Old George, the doorman, could hardly believe his eyes. Robert, so good to see you. How are you? Well, George, very well. I heard you opened an auto shop. Congratulations. I always knew you had more than enough talent. Robert smiled. It felt good to be recognized. The secretary led him to the meeting room. Mrs. Barbara was already waiting, accompanied by Mr. William Foster and 2 other directors. Tyler was not present. Mr. Robert, a pleasure. I'm Barbara Wilson, the financial director. The pleasure is mine, Mrs. Barbara. Mr. William Foster looked at Robert with a strange expression, as if trying to remember where he knew him from. Mr. Robert, can you tell us a bit about your company? Robert took a deep breath and began to present Johnson and Thompson. He talked about the experienced team, the results achieved with other fleets, and the preventive maintenance methods. During the presentation, he saw recognition growing on Mr. William Foster's face. Mr. Robert, the director interrupted, forgive the question, but didn't you work here before? Yes, I did, for 42 years. The silence in the room was almost palpable. Mrs. Barbara and the other directors looked at Mr. William Foster for an explanation. Robert Johnson, of course, you were our head mechanic, but how, when? I was fired 6 months ago for being too old for the company's modern pace. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Mr. William Foster was visibly embarrassed. He vaguely remembered Tyler mentioning some layoffs to modernize the team, but he hadn't paid attention to the details. Mr. Robert, I wasn't aware of the details of this reorganization. Robert maintained his composure. Mr. William, I'm here as a businessman, not as a former employee. My company can offer you a quality service if there's interest. Mrs. Barbara, who seemed to be understanding the situation better, leaned forward. Mr. Johnson, our fleet has been having serious maintenance problems in the last few months. We urgently need a solution. Can I take a look at the maintenance reports from the last 6 months? That would help me better understand the problems and make a proper proposal. Mr. William nodded and asked someone to get the reports. While they waited, the atmosphere in the room was tense. When the papers arrived, Robert began to analyze them. He didn't need much time to identify the problems. You're replacing parts unnecessarily and missing basic problems. I see here 3 cases of engines that were completely disassembled when the problem was just a clogged hose. Is it possible to turn this situation around? Asked Mr. William. Of course. My team can do a full assessment of the fleet in 2 weeks and create a preventive maintenance schedule. In 2 months, you'll have 95% availability. The numbers impressed the board. Currently, the fleet's availability was at 60%. What would the cost be? Asked Mrs. Barbara. Robert presented a detailed proposal. The monthly cost was 30% lower than what the company was currently spending with third-party shops and internal maintenance. How is it possible to offer such a low price with better quality? Questioned one of the directors. Experience, sir. My team knows engines. We don't waste time with wrong diagnoses or replace parts that are working perfectly. The meeting lasted another 2 hours. In the end, the board asked for a week to analyze the proposal. When Robert was leaving, he ran into Tyler in the hallway. The young manager was visibly upset. Robert, I didn't know you were going to be here today. Tyler, how are things? Well, Tyler stammered. I heard you started a company. I did. And it's going very well, thank you. Tyler looked around, checking if anyone was listening. Look, Robert, about that day, it wasn't personal, you understand, right? It was an order from the board to modernize the team. Robert interrupted him with a wave of his hand. Tyler, the past is in the past. Today I came here as a businessman, offering a service. If it works out, great. If it doesn't, that's fine too. But if you take over the maintenance, what will happen to me? For the first time, Robert saw vulnerability in the young man who had fired him. Tyler was afraid of losing his job. That's not up to me, Tyler. It's up to the company's board. Robert headed towards the reception, leaving Tyler standing in the hallway. During the following week, Robert continued normally with the work at the shop, without getting his hopes up too much about the contract with his old company. He already had enough clients and didn't want to create unnecessary expectations. It was on a Friday that Mrs. Barbara called. Mr. Johnson, the board has approved your proposal. When can we start? On Monday, if that's convenient. My team can be there at 7 in the morning to start the fleet assessment. Perfect. There's just one administrative issue. You will need to report to the maintenance manager, who is Tyler Parker. Robert smiled. Life really did have a peculiar sense of humor. No problem, Mrs. Barbara. Professionalism comes first. Over the weekend, Robert gathered his team to explain the situation. Team, we've landed a big contract. But there's a catch. It's with the company where I worked for 42 years and where I was fired from. Carl let out a laugh. Robert, this is pure poetry. They fired you, and now they need you back. It's not exactly like that, Carl. They hired our company. It's different. Walter, always more serious, made an important observation. Robert, we're going to have to be careful not to mix things up. Inside, we're going to find people who worked with you, people who might have celebrated when you left. Walter is right, agreed Robert. We're going in there as professionals. No small talk, no settling scores. Our work will speak for itself. On Monday morning, Robert arrived at the company with his team. It was strange to pass through the front gate again, now not as an employee, but as a service provider. Old George greeted them with a huge smile. Robert, so good to see you back, and with this whole team. Thank you, Old George, we're here to work. Tyler was waiting for them in the shop, visibly uncomfortable. The environment that was once familiar to Robert now seemed smaller and more disorganized. Good morning, everyone, said Tyler, trying to sound natural. Welcome. Robert already knows the company, so you can get started. Robert took command of the situation naturally. Thank you, Tyler. Let's start with a general assessment of the fleet. We need access to the maintenance reports from the last 6 months and the keys to all the vehicles. Of course, Jason here will help you with whatever you need. Jason, the young man who had been promoted after Robert left, greeted the team with a certain coldness. It was clear he felt threatened by their presence. Robert divided his team among the various vehicles in the fleet. Within 2 hours of work, They had already identified problems that had been ignored for months. "Carl, come look at this," called Robert, pointing to a bus engine. "This oil filter should have been changed 3,000 miles ago. It's completely clogged." "And look at this belt, Robert," replied Carl. "It's cracked. It could snap at any moment." Jason approached, trying to understand what they were seeing. "But this bus had a service check last week," he said. "Jason," replied Robert patiently, "a service check isn't just about changing the oil and checking the tires. You have to look at every component, understand the signals the engine is giving." "What do you mean, signals?" Robert started the bus engine and asked Jason to pay attention to the sound. "Do you hear that metallic knocking? That indicates the pistons are slapping. In 2 weeks, this engine will seize if it's not adjusted." Jason was impressed. He had heard that noise many times, but didn't know it meant anything. During lunch, some of the company's older mechanics approached Robert. "Robert, it's good to see you back," said Mike. "I missed your work." "Thank you, Mike. How are things around here?" "Honestly, a mess. Since you left, nobody really understands what's going on with the engines." Frank, another older mechanic, added, "We tried to teach the younger guys, but they don't want to learn. They think the computer solves everything." "A computer is a tool," said Robert, "but you can't program experience." During the afternoon, Tyler appeared in the shop several times, observing the work of Robert's team. It was visible that he was learning things he had never seen before. When Robert explained to Carl how to identify a problem with the fuel pump just by the sound, Tyler approached. "Robert, can I ask you a question?" "Sure." "How did you learn all these things?" Robert stopped what he was doing and looked at Tyler. "Time, Tyler. 42 years of listening to engines, feeling vibrations, observing patterns. Every engine has a personality, a way of running. You learn to talk to them." "Talk to engines?" "It's a way of speaking. But it's almost like that. When you work with something for so long, it speaks to you. It warns you when something is wrong." Tyler Parker was silent for a few seconds. "Robert, can I ask you a favor?" "Go ahead." Could you teach me a few things? I know I made mistakes, that maybe I was hasty in some decisions." Robert studied the young man's face. There was sincerity there, and a humility that hadn't been there before. "Tyler, I'm not a company employee anymore. I'm a service provider. My role here is to fix the fleet's problems, not train employees." Tyler lowered his head, clearly embarrassed. "But," Robert continued, "if during the work you want to observe, ask questions. I don't see a problem with that." Tyler's face lit up. "Really? Thank you, Robert. I promise I won't get in the way." In the following weeks, Tyler became Robert's shadow. He arrived early, left late, asked about everything. Gradually, he began to understand concepts that were once completely foreign to him. "Robert, why are you helping Tyler?" Carl asked during a moment when they were alone. "He fired you, man." "Carl, holding a grudge gets you nowhere. Besides, if he learns properly, he can take better care of the fleet when we're not here." "You're a better man than I am, Robert." "It's not about being a better man, it's about being a professional." After a month of work, the results were impressive. Fleet availability had risen to 85%, and maintenance costs had dropped by 40%. Mr. William Foster called a meeting to evaluate the results. "Mr. Johnson, the numbers are fantastic. How did you achieve this?" "Mr. Foster, the secret is in preventing problems instead of waiting for them to happen. My team created a maintenance schedule based on each vehicle's history." "And Tyler? How is he reacting to your work?" Robert looked at Tyler, who was present at the meeting. "Tyler has shown a lot of interest in learning. I believe he will be a good professional once he gains more experience." Tyler was visibly moved by the comment. After the meeting, Mr. William Foster called Robert for a private conversation. "Robert, I want to make a proposal. How about if the company bought a stake in your auto shop? You would become our exclusive maintenance partners." "How do you mean, sir?" "A partnership. You would remain independent, but with guaranteed long-term contracts. The company would come in as a minority investor." It was a tempting offer, but Robert knew he needed to talk to Richard Thompson before making any decision. "Mr. Foster, I need to discuss this with my partner. Can I give you an answer next week?" Of course, but don't take too long. We are very interested in solidifying this partnership. That night, Robert told Martha everything. It's incredible, Martha. The company that fired me now wants to be a partner in my auto shop. And you, what do you want to do? I don't know. On one hand, it would be huge financial security. On the other, I'm not sure I want to mix things up that way. Robert, you've already proven your worth. Now it's a matter of deciding which path you want to take. But remember, you don't need anyone's approval anymore. The next day, Robert talked to Richard about the proposal. Robert, commercially, it's an excellent opportunity, but I understand your personal reservations. Richard, do you think it would be good for our company? It would be fantastic, but only if you're comfortable with the idea. Robert spent the entire weekend thinking. By Monday, he had made a decision. Mr. Foster, we've spoken with our lawyers and we'd like to make a counter-proposal. I'm listening. The company can have long-term contracts with us, but without an ownership stake, we want to maintain our independence. Mr. William Foster was surprised. I expected Robert to accept the partnership immediately. May I ask why? Because, with all due respect, Mr. Foster, independence is something I worked very hard to achieve. I don't want to give it up now. I understand. And the long-term contracts? 5 years renewable, guaranteed maintenance for the entire fleet, with availability and cost targets. The negotiations lasted 2 weeks. In the end, they reached an agreement that satisfied both parties. On the day of the contract signing, Robert arrived at the company wearing the same suit he had worn to the first meeting, but now he felt completely different. He was no longer the humiliated former employee, but a successful businessman closing an important deal. The ceremony was simple, held in the boardroom. Present were Mr. Foster, Mrs. Barbara Wilson, Richard, and Tyler. Mr. Johnson, said Mr. Foster after the signing, I'd like to take this opportunity to offer an official apology. Your dismissal was a serious mistake on our part. Mr. Foster, the past is in the past. What matters is the future. Tyler approached him after the ceremony. Robert, can I talk to you for a minute? They stepped away from the others. I want to apologize, for real. I was arrogant. I thought I knew everything. You taught me that experience can't be improvised. Tyler, you're young. You have plenty of time to learn. The important thing is to stay humble. Can I keep learning from you? Of course. After all, we're work partners now. 6 months later, the partnership was solidified. The Windy City Transit fleet had 97% availability, a company record. Tyler had become a competent mechanic under Robert's guidance. The young man had learned to listen to the engines, to observe the details, to respect the experience of his elders. Jason had also changed. Instead of trying to compete with the experienced mechanics, he started learning from them. Robert created a mentorship program where each young mechanic was paired with an experienced one. Robert, Jason said one afternoon, thank you for teaching me that youth and experience can work together. Jason, knowledge has no age. What matters is the willingness to learn. The Johnson & Thompson Auto Shop had grown to 25 employees and 3 warehouses. Besides Windy City Transit, they served 12 other companies in the region. One Friday afternoon, Robert was organizing the week's reports when he received an unexpected visitor. It was a young man of about 25, well-dressed, carrying a briefcase. Mr. Johnson, my name is Christopher Miller. I'm a business efficiency consultant. I'd like to talk about how I can help modernize your shop. Robert hid a smile. The situation was deliciously ironic. Christopher, have a seat. How can I help you? Sir, our company specializes in process optimization. We see that your shop has a workforce profile that is, let's say, more mature. We can help modernize the operation, bring in new blood, implement cutting-edge technology. Robert listened patiently to Christopher's presentation. It was almost a repeat of what Tyler had said 2 years earlier. Christopher, can I ask you a question? Of course, sir. Do you understand engines? Well, not technically, but I understand processes, efficiency of... Christopher, Robert interrupted gently. Our shop maintains a 97% availability rate with our clients. Our costs are 30% lower than the market average. Our waiting list is 3 months long. Christopher fell silent. "Do you know how we achieve these results?" Robert continued. "Because our mature team has over 500 years of combined experience with engines. They hear things that computers can't detect. They see problems that sensors can't identify." "But, sir, modernization is inevitable." "Christopher, modernization doesn't mean throwing out what works. It means integrating the new with the old. Here, we use the most modern technology, but in the hands of people who know what they're doing." Robert got up and walked Christopher to the exit. "Christopher, a word of advice. Before you try to modernize something, first learn how it works." That night, at home, Robert told Martha about the consultant's visit. "Seems like you're becoming a reference, huh?" she said, smiling. "You know what makes me happiest, Martha? It's not the company's success. It's seeing people like Tyler and Jason learning that experience and youth can work together. You've always been a teacher, Robert. It's just that now you have a bigger classroom." 2 years after signing the first contract, Robert received a special invitation. The Chicago Transit Association wanted to honor him as Business Person of the Year in the Innovation in Services category. The ceremony was held at McCormick Place. Robert arrived accompanied by Martha, who had chosen a special blue dress for the occasion. In the audience were his employees, clients, and even Tyler and Jason, who had taken time off to attend. "The winner of the Business Person of the Year award," announced the host, "is Robert Johnson of Johnson & Thompson Industrial Maintenance for revolutionizing the concept of preventive maintenance in the transportation sector, demonstrating that experience and innovation can go hand in hand." Robert walked up to the stage to emotional applause. As he received the trophy, he looked out at the audience and saw familiar faces smiling at him. Tyler was visibly moved. "Ladies and gentlemen," Robert began, "this award isn't mine. It belongs to a whole generation of professionals who were considered obsolete, but who proved that experience doesn't age." The applause grew louder. "When I was fired 3 years ago for being considered too old, I thought my career was over. Today I discovered I was actually just beginning a new chapter." Robert paused, emotional. "I want to dedicate this award to all the experienced professionals who still have so much to contribute, and to the young people who have the humility to learn. The future doesn't belong to the young or the experienced. It belongs to those who can unite energy and wisdom." The audience rose in a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. After the ceremony, Tyler approached him. "Robert, thank you for everything, for teaching me that being young is no excuse for being arrogant." "Tyler, thank you for teaching me that it's possible to change and grow at any age." At the party that followed, Robert was surrounded by business people, journalists, and other professionals. But the most special moment was when Richard got up on the makeshift stage. "Everyone, I want to make an announcement." Johnson & Thompson has just signed contracts to expand to Springfield and Rockford. In 2 years, we'll be the largest preventive maintenance company in the Midwest. The celebration was huge. Robert looked around and saw his team, his friends, his family, all there because of a journey that began with humiliation and turned into triumph. Later, back at home, Robert and Martha were on the porch looking at the stars. "Martha, sometimes I think about what would have happened if Tyler hadn't fired me. You'd be retired complaining that young people don't know how to do anything," she replied, laughing. "That's true. Maybe I should thank him." "Robert, you turned an injustice into an opportunity. That's what matters. You know what I'm proudest of." "What?" "Managing to show that age is just a number. What counts is the passion for what you do." 5 years after the dismissal, Robert was in his office when he received an unexpected call. "Robert, it's Mr. William Foster. I need to speak with you urgently." "Is something wrong, sir? Can you come to the company? It's about Tyler." Robert left immediately for Windy City Transit. He found Mr. William Foster in the parking lot, visibly worried. "Robert, Tyler had a health issue. He had to step away. We don't know when he'll be back." "What kind of issue?" "Stress. The doctor said he was working too much, being too hard on himself." Robert shook his head. He knew the signs. "Mr. Foster, can I talk to him?" "Of course, he's at home, but he doesn't want any visitors." Robert got the address and went straight to Tyler's house. The young man's wife greeted him at the door. "Mr. Robert, it's so good to see you." Tyler is in a bad way. He doesn't want to talk to anyone. Can I try? Tyler was in his bedroom in his pajamas, staring at the ceiling. Tyler, can I come in? The young man turned, and upon seeing Robert, started to cry. Robert, I messed everything up again. I was trying to be perfect, to control everything, and I ended up getting sick. Robert sat on the edge of the bed. Tyler, what happened? I wanted to prove that I had learned, that I could manage on my own. I started working 12, 14 hours a day. I didn't delegate anything. I checked everything 3 times, until my body said enough. Tyler, do you remember the first thing I taught you about engines? Tyler thought for a few seconds. That they need regular maintenance to work well. Exactly, and that goes for people too. You can't work at your limit indefinitely. But I wanted to show that I was up to the task. Tyler, you've already proven your worth. Now you need to learn to take care of yourself. Robert spent another hour talking with Tyler, sharing stories about how he had learned to balance work and personal life. Robert, can I ask you a favor? Of course. Can you take care of the maintenance at the company while I recover? I know you have your own responsibilities, but Tyler, don't worry about that now. Focus on getting better. Robert temporarily took over the supervision of maintenance at Windy City Transit, balancing it with his responsibilities at his own company. Richard supported the decision completely. Robert, this is what sets us apart. We take care of people, not just business. During the 6 weeks Tyler was away, Robert implemented a more balanced work system at the company. He created rotating schedules, delegated responsibilities, and set limits on overtime. When Tyler returned, he found a healthier work environment and a more motivated team. Robert, how did you manage to improve things so much in such a short time? Tyler, remember that talk about listening to engines? You also need to talk to people. Listen to what they're saying. Understand the signs of overload. You're right. I was so focused on the processes that I forgot about the people. Tyler, processes are important, but people are essential. That year, the partnership between Johnson & Thompson and Windy City Transit was renewed for another 5 years. The signing ceremony was in the same hall where Robert had been honored as Businessman of the Year. This time, it was Tyler who gave the speech. Ladies and gentlemen, 6 years ago I made a decision I thought was modern and innovative. I fired the most experienced employee in our company. Today I can say it was the best mistake I ever made in my life. The audience laughed, but Tyler remained serious, because that mistake taught me that modernity isn't about throwing away what's old. It's about knowing how to integrate experience with innovation. Robert Johnson isn't just our business partner. He is our mentor, our guide, our example of how to do business with integrity. Robert was in the front row, next to Martha, clearly moved. Robert transformed our company, not just technically but culturally. He taught us that respect, patience, and wisdom are technologies that never become obsolete. The audience applauded enthusiastically. When Tyler finished his speech, he came down from the stage and hugged Robert. Thank you for giving me a second chance to learn. Tyler, we all deserve second chances. The important thing is to know how to make the most of them. 10 years after being fired, Robert was about to turn 75. Johnson & Thompson had become a national benchmark in preventive maintenance, with branches in 6 states. At a board meeting, Richard made an unexpected proposal. Robert, I want you to take over as president of the company. Richard, we've talked about this. I don't want executive positions. I like being close to the auto shops. But you are the soul of the company. It's only fair that you be officially recognized. Robert thought about it for a few days. Finally, he accepted, but on one condition. He would continue working directly with the mechanics at least 2 days a week. The inauguration was a party. Employees from all branches came to Chicago. Tyler was a special guest and made a point of being there. Robert, said Tyler during the party, do you know what the most important lesson I learned from you was? What? That leadership isn't about giving orders. It's about serving. Tyler, you learned the lesson well. Now it's your turn to teach others. That night, already at home, Robert and Martha were talking on the porch, as they always did during important moments. "Martha, when I look back to that terrible day I was fired, I think it was the best day of my life." "Why?" "Because it forced me to discover that I was capable of much more than I imagined." "Robert, you were always capable. You just needed an opportunity to show it." "No, Martha. I needed to learn that value doesn't come from a title or a salary. It comes from the difference we make in people's lives." Robert looked at the stars, thoughtful. "Do you know how many mechanics our company has trained?" "Hundreds. 342. Young and experienced, each one carrying forward the idea that competence has no age. That is your true legacy, Robert." "Our legacy, Martha. You were always with me." 2 years later, at 77, Robert made a decision that surprised everyone. He decided to officially retire as president of the company. "Richard, the time has come to pass the baton to the younger generation." "Robert, are you sure? The company is your life." "That's exactly why. I want to leave while I'm still on top, while I can still choose my successor." The choice surprised everyone. Tyler would be the new president of Johnson & Thompson. "Robert, I wasn't expecting this," said Tyler, visibly emotional. "Tyler, you learned that humility is the foundation of true leadership. You are the right person to continue our work." The handover ceremony was moving. Robert gave a speech that became part of the company's history. "When I was fired 15 years ago, I thought my career was over. Today, I see I was just beginning my true mission, to prove that experience is a treasure that should not be wasted." Robert paused, looking at the audience full of employees, clients, and friends. "But I learned something even more important, that true success is not individual. It's collective. It's about building something that is bigger than ourselves." Tyler took over the presidency with a touching speech. "Robert Johnson is not just my predecessor. He is my teacher, my mentor, my example. Under his leadership, our company proved that age is a synonym for wisdom, not obsolescence." After the ceremony, Robert and Tyler spoke alone. "Tyler, just one request. Always keep the doors open for experienced professionals. They have a lot to offer." "Robert, that's a promise. In fact, I want to create an official mentorship program where every experienced employee is paired with a young one." "Perfect idea. That way, knowledge is never lost." In retirement, Robert didn't stay idle. He created a volunteer consultancy to help small auto shops improve their processes. 3 days a week, he visited family-owned businesses, teaching maintenance and management techniques. "Martha, it's incredible how I still have so much to teach. And to learn as well, Robert. You never stop surprising yourself, it was true." At 78, Robert still discovered new ways to solve old problems. He still got excited about new technologies that could be integrated with traditional techniques. One Thursday afternoon, he received an unexpected call. "Mr. Robert, this is Sarah from Chicago News Network. We're doing a story on entrepreneurship in later life. Could you grant us an interview?" The interview aired on a Friday night, on the network's highest-rated program. Robert talked about his journey, about the challenges of starting a business after 65, about the importance of valuing experienced professionals. "Mr. Robert," asked the journalist, "what is your advice for people who are going through situations similar to what you experienced?" "My advice is, don't accept it when people say you are too old to start over. Age is just a number. What matters is passion, the desire to contribute, to make a difference. And for young entrepreneurs, that they have the humility to learn from those with experience. Youth and experience together are unbeatable." The interview had a big impact. Robert received hundreds of calls and emails from people who identified with his story. One of the most touching messages came from a 72-year-old man from New York. "Mr. Robert, I saw your interview on TV and I want to thank you. I was fired 2 years ago for being considered too old. After watching your testimony, I found the courage to open my own auto shop. Thank you for showing me that it's never too late to start over." "Martha, look at this message," said Robert, moved. "You've become an inspiration to many people, love. That wasn't the intention. I just wanted to fix engines. But you ended up fixing lives too." 5 years after his official retirement, at 82, Robert still maintained his consulting activities. The difference was that now Martha accompanied him on some visits, helping with the administrative part. "Robert, don't you get tired?" someone would always ask. "Tired of what? Of doing what I love?" Impossible. One Tuesday morning, Robert was at a small auto shop in Cicero, teaching diagnostic techniques to a family of mechanics, when he received a call from Tyler. "Robert, I need to tell you some news." "Go ahead." "Johnson & Thompson has just been chosen to maintain the bus fleet for the Chicago Express bus. It's the biggest contract in our history." Robert smiled. The company he had helped build was still growing, even without his daily presence. "Congratulations, Tyler, you deserve it." "Robert, none of this would be possible without what you built. Do you want to come to the contract signing?" "Of course. I wouldn't miss it for anything." The signing ceremony was at City Hall, the seat of the Cook County government. Robert arrived accompanied by Martha, proud to see the company he had helped build reaching such heights. During the ceremony, the governor gave a speech about the importance of valuing local businesses. Johnson & Thompson is an example of how it's possible to build a solid company based on competence and integrity. After the signing, Tyler made a point of introducing Robert to the governor. "Your Excellency, this is Robert Johnson, the founder of our company." "Mr. Robert, it's an honor to meet you. I've heard a lot about your story." "The pleasure is mine, Governor." "May I ask what the secret to your company's success is?" Robert smiled. "Governor, the secret is simple. Treat people with respect and do the job right the first time." On the way home, Martha commented, "Robert, did you see how everyone was looking at you with admiration?" "Martha, I admire even more the young people who are carrying on the work. They took our ideas and ran with them far beyond what I ever imagined. That's what happens when you plant good seeds." That night, Robert kept thinking about the journey he had been on. 20 years earlier, he was just a mechanic who had been fired for being considered too old. Now he was recognized as one of the leading business owners in the Midwest transportation sector. But what made him proudest wasn't the awards or the recognition. It was knowing he had proven that experience has value, that age is no obstacle for someone with determination, and that it's possible to turn an injustice into an opportunity for growth. At 85, Robert still kept up his activities, though at a more relaxed pace. Twice a week he visited small auto shops. Once a month he gave lectures at technical colleges, and whenever possible he participated in events at Johnson & Thompson. It was at one of these lectures that he met a young man who would change his perspective on his own legacy. "Professor Robert," said the 18-year-old after the lecture, "my name is Johnny Williams. I really want to be a mechanic, but my father says there's no future in that profession." "Why do you want to be a mechanic, Johnny?" "Because I love understanding how things work. Ever since I was little, I take everything apart to see what's inside." Robert smiled. That was exactly how he felt at 18. "Johnny, if you have passion, you have a future. A good mechanic will always have work." "But everyone talks about technology, robots, electric cars." "Johnny, it doesn't matter how much technology comes along. There will always be broken machines to fix. There will always be engines to keep running. The secret is to evolve with the technology, not resist it." The young man looked visibly excited. "Professor, could you mentor me? Teach me a few things?" Robert saw in Johnny the same hunger for knowledge he himself had in his youth. "Johnny, I'll do better than that. I'll introduce you to Tyler from Johnson & Thompson. They have a youth apprentice program." 2 weeks later, Johnny was starting as an apprentice at the company. Robert made a point of being there for the young man's first few days. "Johnny, the first lesson is, always respect the tools, and always respect those with more experience." "Yes, Professor." "And the second lesson, never stop asking questions. An engine that doesn't make noise when it has a problem is an engine that's broken for good." Mentoring Johnny brought Robert a renewed energy. It was like seeing his own youth reflected in the curious eyes of the young man. "Martha, I've found my spiritual successor." "What do you mean?" "Johnny has the same passion I had, the same desire to understand, to learn, to fix things." "And you're going to teach him?" "I'm going to teach him everything I know, and he's going to learn things I never even dreamed of. During the next 2 years, Robert dedicated himself intensely to Johnny's training. The young man proved to be a prodigy, combining natural curiosity with the discipline to study. Professor Robert, how do you diagnose a problem just by the sound? Johnny, that comes with time, but I can teach you how to speed up the process. Robert developed a systematic method for teaching diagnosis by sound, vibration, and even smell. Johnny absorbed everything like a sponge. Tyler, who was following the young man's development, was impressed. Robert, this kid is special. Tyler, everyone is special when they find someone who believes in them. That's true. You believed in me when I didn't deserve it. Tyler, everyone deserves a chance to grow. At 87, Robert received an honor that moved him deeply. The Chicago Technical College decided to create the Robert Johnson Automotive Maintenance Laboratory. Professor Robert, said the school principal during the inauguration, this laboratory will train generations of mechanics using the methods you developed. Robert cut the inaugural ribbon, accompanied by Martha, Tyler, Johnny Williams, and dozens of former students he had trained over the years. Ladies and gentlemen, said Robert in his speech, this laboratory is not a monument to the past. It is a bridge to the future. Here, young people will learn that tradition and innovation can walk together. Johnny Williams, who was now one of the youngest instructors at Johnson & Thompson, made a point of speaking at the ceremony. Professor Robert is not just my mentor. He is proof that age is synonymous with wisdom, not limitation. Everything I know I learned from him, and everything I will teach will be based on his teachings. After the ceremony, Robert and Martha walked through the laboratory, observing the modern equipment integrated with traditional workbenches. Martha, it's surreal to think that I was once considered obsolete. Robert, you were never obsolete. You were just waiting for the right moment to show your value. You know what makes me happiest? Seeing that we built something that will continue to exist long after we're gone. You built much more than a company, Robert. You built a philosophy. That night, already at home, Robert kept looking at a photo of the first class of apprentices he had trained. Many of them were now owners of their own auto shops. Others were supervisors at large companies. Martha, we managed to prove that experience has value. You proved much more than that. You proved that respect, humility, and competence never go out of style. At 90 years old, Robert drastically reduced his activities but did not abandon them completely. Once a week, he still visited the technical school's laboratory, talking with students and sharing stories. It was during one of these visits that a student asked a question that deeply marked him. Professor Robert, do you have any regrets in life? Robert thought for a few seconds. My only regret is not starting my own company sooner. But I understand that everything has its right time. And what advice would you give to someone my age? Never accept it when people say you are too young or too old for something. Competence has no age. Passion has no age. Determination has no age. 3 months after this conversation, Robert was at home when he received a call that deeply moved him. Professor, it's Michael, your former student. Remember me? Of course, Michael. How are you? Professor, I wanted to tell you that I just opened my own auto shop, and you know what I called it? What? Michael Johnson Auto Shop. I used your last name because everything I know I learned from you. Robert was speechless for a few seconds. Michael, that is the greatest honor anyone could give me. Professor, you changed my life. Now I want to do the same for other young people. When he hung up the phone, Robert had tears in his eyes. Martha, I think I found the true meaning of everything we built. What is it? It's not about engines, it's not about companies, it's about people. It's about showing every person that they have value, regardless of age. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of the story and where you're watching from. If you have something to share with us, leave it in the comments with sincere words. Do you believe Robert made the right decisions by turning his dismissal into an opportunity? We would love to read your opinion. Thank you so much for your company. Don't forget to leave your like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving stories.